Thank you very much, Karen. It is now my honor to introduce Sarita Gupta to you all. In writing these introductions, I, like many of you, am a visual learner. I pick up visual cues from other individuals. So in trying to learn more about Sarita, I actually YouTubed her. And upon seeing Sarita Gupta for the first time, I not only saw a manifestation of a beautiful human being, but also an individual who boasts eloquence and poise that is rare to find in an individual today. Sarita Gupta's passions have led her to become the Executive Director of Jobs with Justice and American Rights at Work. Sarita leads her pack at Jobs with Justice, building a strong, progressive labor movement that works closely with community, faith, and student organizations to build a global movement for economic and social justice.
JWJ's local coalitions have extended to over 45 communities in 25 states. American Rights at Work focuses on labor policy and advocacy organization. Her passion to organize began when she was a college student, like many of us today. She, like our other speakers, is an illumination of hope. Please help me in welcoming Sarita Gupta.
Good morning. It's so amazing to be here this morning with all of you. And I'm going to start my little timer to make sure I stay within our time slot here. First of all, I want to thank you so much for that very warm introduction. I really appreciate that. And I also want to thank Chris Kerr and Kim Miller for inviting me this morning to be able to speak with all of you. I've been so inspired for years by the Ignatian Solidarity Network. When I was a local organizer in Chicago with Jobs with Justice, I had the opportunity to work with students at Loyola. Here in DC, our coalition has had the opportunity to work with Jesuit students across the DC region, which has been amazing. And across the country, actually, many of our coalitions have strong ties with many of you and histories with many of your institutions. So it's a really great honor to be here with all of you this morning. And I'm so thrilled to hear about your plans to advocate on such critical issues of our time, like raising the minimum wage and immigration reform, fighting for immigration reform. I love this up here. God's love has no borders. Immigration reform must be just. That's exactly right, and I'm just so thrilled that this is part of your agenda. So, as you know, my name is Sarita Gupta, and I'm the Executive Director of Jobs with Justice. I've been asked to speak this morning with all of you about the realities facing low-wage workers. But before I get into the issues, I do want to talk a bit about Jobs with Justice so you understand why and how the work I do and the work you do and the values you hold are so interconnected. At Jobs with Justice, we believe that all workers should have collective bargaining rights or a voice on the job, employment security, and a decent standard of living within an economy that works for everyone. Does that sound right to you all? Yeah? So we do across the country. We bring together labor, community, faith, and student voices to stand up and support and make sure we win real improvements in workers' lives, but that we're also shaping the public discourse on workers' rights and the economy. So given this, it's really no surprise that I'm here this morning with all of you. A few years ago, during the height of the economic crisis, we at Jobs with Justice made a decision to focus our energy on two of the fastest growing job sectors currently of low-wage work, and that is the care sector, home care, and the retail sector. As a result, we have two major campaigns that I'm going to talk a bit about today. One is called Change Walmart, Change America, and the other, you should clap. and the other is called Caring Across Generations. Knowing that a major barrier for a number of low-wage workers today to attain the kind of economic security they should be able to have is their immigration status, we've also been committed for years in the fight for comprehensive immigration reform. We have a campaign called Power, which I will talk about shortly, to ensure that basic labor and civil rights protections are built into any legislation to improve our immigration system. So let's talk about the problems low-wage workers face, and I'll tell you more about these campaigns. The last several decades have seen a torrent of neoliberal economic policies that are defined by privatization, deregulation, union busting, and corporate-driven globalization. The result isn't just the slashing of wages and working conditions, the loss of jobs, the decimation of small businesses, the rising gap between the super rich and the rest of us here and around the globe. Those, unfortunately, are just symptoms of the systemic reordering of the global economy to put massive capital on top and everything else, workers, the environment, community needs, our democracy, you name it, on the bottom. The lack of steady employment or no employment is quickly becoming the new normal in America as it continues its unchecked spread around the globe. 1/3 of American families now live below the poverty line. That's outrageous in a country like the United States of America. Many of them work, but as we know, work doesn't make a difference when productivity is rising, but wages continue to fall. The minimum wage today would have been $10.74 if wages had kept up with inflation. But instead, minimum wage workers earn $7.25 an hour. Can you imagine living on $7.25 an hour, raising your families, participating in your community on $7.25 an hour? It's something for us to think about. Homelessness is growing, and among those who have homes, more and more of us are being displaced due to disasters like storms and food shortages, disasters that we call natural, but in which human beings very much have a hand. If opportunity is a ladder in America, far too many in our nation are quickly falling down the greased rungs. And when we fall, there is no safety net to catch us. Instead of cushioning the collapse of American families most struggling in this imbalanced new economic order, politically motivated forces in politics, too frequently in both parties, have pushed cuts to social programs and other austerity measures that simply hasten this human, economic, and national decline. The result? For large multinational corporations, it's a golden era of untold wealth and prosperity. But for working people who have always struggled, the new economic order is a gauntlet of constrained opportunity and disappearing support structures. So what does this mean for low-wage workers, really? I just threw a lot of words at you. So let's begin with a story. My friend, Patricia Locks, is from the Seattle area. She's a 48-year-old single mom who has worked at Walmart for 11 years. At $13.20 an hour, she works full-time and barely makes $19,000 a year. She lives in low-income housing, relies on food banks and food stamps to feed her teenage daughter, and she can't afford health insurance. A paycheck isn't enough to cover rent, and she is only able to stay afloat because of a monthly child support check. And she put it, after I pay my rent, I have to decide which bills I absolutely must pay that month. Following a recent stay in the hospital due to complications with her diabetes, Patricia was forced to file for bankruptcy. The alternative was for the hospital to take hundreds of dollars out of her paychecks indefinitely to cover the $21,000 of hospital bills that she has accrued. That would have left her with almost nothing, so her only option was bankruptcy. As she put it, it's depressing and scary. No one who works for one of the world's largest and wealthiest companies should have to live like this. I don't think it's asking too much to earn enough so I don't have to rely on food banks and other assistance to survive. And that's why I'm going to keep fighting, because I want a better life for me and my daughter. There are so many stories like Patricia's because of the way in which our economy has changed over the last several decades. Too many workers are having to choose between paying for food, paying for rent, paying for medicine, paying for childcare. The sad irony of our current economy is that the very workers who put food on our tables at restaurants cannot afford to put food on their own tables. Most restaurant workers, servers, only make $2.13 an hour. That's the tipped minimum wage. How many of you knew that? Folks know that? Think about that. If you're a worker serving food and you only make $2.13 an hour, and then hopefully you get tips to be able to make more to survive. Home care workers who care for our loved ones cannot afford care for themselves or their own families. But as bad as it is, workers are uniting and organizing, and that's where we see this horizon of hope. So who are low-wage workers today? So contrary to stereotypes and repeated claims by opponents to raising the minimum wage, the overwhelming majority of low-wage workers are adults, not teens in high school, and they contribute a substantial portion of their household incomes to their household incomes. 3/4 of minimum wage earners are 20 years old or older today. A stunning 35 million Americans, that's 26% of our workforce, earn less than $10.55 an hour. Majority of low-wage workers are white, non-Hispanic workers, which is also counter to what most people perceive. And a majority of people of color and immigrants in this country are low-wage workers. Nearly half of all low-wage workers are women. And there's a few really key industries within which we see low-wage workers: restaurants, fast food, retail, care, sort of hospitality, the list goes on. So, as I told the story of Patricia, I want to go back to the story of retail workers. Leading this trend nationwide is, in fact, Walmart, America's largest retailer, which last year opened its doors at 8 p.m. on Thanksgiving Day, reported its best Black Friday ever in 2013, selling 5,000 items per second. The company's influence now stretches far beyond retail. They're setting standards for warehouse workers, for logistics workers, pricing, wages, and working conditions in all of these different industries that serve Walmart's needs. But the true cost of Walmart's low prices is that their business model drives down standards for workers everywhere. So while Walmart has seen its profits balloon and its executives have seen their pay climb steadily, Walmart associates, like so many other men and women in America today, have been working longer hours for less pay. Walmart pays its associates an average of just $8.81 an hour. So an employee who works Walmart's definition of full-time, which is 34 hours per week, makes just $15,500 a year, placing them squarely below the poverty line. And those full-time positions aren't the norm. To avoid having to pay employees benefits, the company increasingly hires part-time positions, subjecting associates to erratic schedules, limited job security, and even less opportunity to make ends meet. Last year, I met with so many Walmart workers who told me that they have no control over their schedules. So that means if they have to have childcare in place for their kids while they work, they have no way to plan in advance for that to happen. So the issues of wages are really important, but so are the issues of scheduling for so many retail workers. And it gets worse. These employment conditions aren't just the problem for Walmart workers and their families. Studies consistently show that taxpayers end up paying the price for companies that provide their workforce with poor wages and benefits. When one of the world's most profitable retailers pays substandard wages and benefits, its employees are forced to rely on government assistance. So we're all paying for Walmart's irresponsibility. So by setting the industry standard and driving down wages and working conditions, Walmart is complicit in the troubling trend that traps too many families in the cycle of the working poor. Jobs paying less than $14 an hour in retail, fast food, and other low-wage industries made up 1 of every 5 jobs lost in the recession, but now account for 3 of every 5 jobs being created in the recovery. We all know that that's not a way to build a strong economy or community. So last year, Walmart associates had finally had enough. One by one, in cities across the country, a brave and growing number of Walmart employees began walking off the job to protest the company's bad business behavior. The historic strikes captured the public's attention and inspired walkouts and protests by thousands of other low-wage workers demanding fairness on the job. How many of you have been following fast food workers who've been going on strike across the country? It's pretty amazing to see these workers take on major corporations and say, enough is enough, we deserve better. So I'm actually going to show you a video that highlights a bit of what the workers have been doing.
Because we live in America and we work for the world's largest company and we're still not making it.
Because I have to choose between paying my bills and having enough to eat.
Because I'm 52 years old and I can't afford my own apartment on what I make at Walmart.
Because management bullies us and causes unnecessary stress.
Stand up, live better.
Because I'm tired of working for a company where workers get cheated and cheaters get rewarded.
Because I want a better life for my son.
Because my management disrespects me in front of customers.
Stand up, live better.
Because I'm tired of seeing my coworkers discouraged and mistreated.
Because of favoritism and unfair scheduling.
Because management needs to work with their associates when they're doing the work schedule.
Because the Walton family has as much wealth as 45 million American families.
Stand up, live better.
Because long-term associates are being fired.
Because I'm tired of my store manager calling my fellow associates stupid.
Because they don't treat me like a human being.
Stand up, live better.
Because my fellow associates have to use our local food pantries.
Because I am tired being discriminated by management.
Because we have to depend on each other check by check and borrow money from each other just to make it to the next week.
Stand up, live better.
Because of all the favoritism in my store.
Because I love my job, but I hate the way I'm being treated unfairly.
Because when we speak out, Walmart retaliates.
Because if I weren't able to live with family, I would have to choose between health care and food.
Stand up, live better.
Because we are a people. We're not cattle. We deserve respect.
Because I treat my mom with disapproval, I want my mom to be treated with respect.
Because when I started college, Walmart cut my hours.
Because I spoke out in my store and Walmart illegally fired me for it.
Stand up. Live better.
Because together, we are stronger than we are alone.
Because I like to make a difference for those who are too scared to come forward.
Because Walmart can afford to pay us enough to live better.
Stand up, live better.
I wanted to bring some of the voices of the workers themselves into this room. So many of them are risking so much standing up in their workplaces. We've seen workers be fired for speaking up in their workplace, in the stores, but community allies come out and support workers to get their jobs back. We actually, through action of community, faith, student members standing with the workers, have been able to ensure that workers are getting their jobs back after being fired for speaking up in their workplaces. Often I get this question, are you really making a difference? Can we really change a company like Walmart? I'll just say the public pressure is growing. 3 board members left last year since we started the campaign. We've blocked expansion in Massachusetts and New York of Walmart stores if they didn't agree to actually meet basic community standards around jobs and environmental standards. We've been able to stop some of the exploitation of low-wage workers along the supply chain. So seafood workers on the Gulf Coast who supply seafood to Walmart, who are under forced labor conditions. We've been able to force Walmart to renegotiate and relook at their relationships with suppliers. So it's a huge campaign that I hope you will consider being a part of, because our voices as consumers is really, really important. It's important to be a part of saying, this is not okay anymore. We cannot treat workers this way, and really talk about the true costs of low prices at Walmart. So this Thanksgiving, again, you'll start hearing workers have begun going on strike again this week, next week, and as we get closer to Black Friday, there will be lots of actions happening at Walmart stores in your communities. I hope you will consider coming out and supporting the workers, supporting community members to make sure that we say no more low wages at Walmart, that workers deserve to make at least $25,000 a year, which is what Walmart can aptly afford to pay all of its associates. So more to come. Listen for the stories over the next few weeks on that front. But along with Walmart workers have been standing in solidarity with fast food workers, and fast food workers have definitely taken on the fight to raise the minimum wage. In states across the country, so many communities are coming together to say we need to raise the minimum wage in our states, but we also need to put the pressure on the federal level. We did an event the other night, and a worker from Burger King in New York City was one of the first set of striking workers who went out on strike, fast food workers. He got up and he said, he told his story of why he did this, and then he said, really, can you imagine raising your family on $7.25 an hour? Because I haven't figured out how to do that well enough to make sure my family has what they need. And so we are also just going to continue to see lots of bold actions by fast food workers across the country, again, who are facing retaliation, who are being fired for speaking out. But our job as community is to come together and say, actually, they have the right to have a voice on the job, and we want to support them in doing that, and we want to raise the minimum wage. So are you with me to help raise the minimum wage? Raising the minimum wage will make life better for so many workers, and it's on us to make sure that that happens. But there's a whole other sector of low-wage workers that I want to talk about, which are care workers for a moment. You know, we're in this interesting moment of our times, what's called the age wave. Every 8 seconds in our country, somebody turns 65. Can you believe that? Every 8 seconds, someone turns 65. That's 10,000 people a day, 4 million people a year in the United States. So why does this matter? Because as more and more people are growing older and living longer lives, people want to age at home and in their communities. Yet, we don't have a home care workforce that can meet that need. Currently, we only have 3 million direct care workers or home care workers. These are workers who literally come to homes and care for our loved ones. Often, they're elder care or they're child care providers who get asked to support aging adults in homes. Our needs are growing rapidly. We know that because of the age wave, by the year 2040, there will be millions of people in America who will need home care. Yet these jobs are some of the poorest quality jobs in America. The median salary for an American care worker is $31,000. But for a home care worker, it's $16,000. While more than half of such workers are paid at least a minimum wage, many do not receive time and a half when they work more than 40 hours a week. So the care sector is huge. So many people depend on home care workers, yet because of the low wages and because it's a high-risk job in terms of injury, we see a turnover of people who can't sustain themselves in these jobs. And the implications for our families are that we then have a turnover of workers coming into our homes. So we launched a campaign called Caring Across Generations to really lift up the dignity for everyone in the long-term care system. We literally want to transform the way we care in America. And how we're going to do that is to make sure that families have access and can afford home care, because most families cannot afford home care right now who need it. But on top of it, that the care workforce itself is able to get paid wages and have working conditions that allow the work to be sustainable. For too long, consumers and workers have been pitted against one another. And what we're trying to do is knit our interests together in this moment, with the demographics shifting the way they are, to say we can actually change the way we care in America so that both workers and families can get what they need. This last year, we won a major victory. Home care workers, along with agricultural workers or farm workers, were two sectors of workers who are left out of basic labor law protections. So they don't have basic minimum wage or overtime protections. This last year, we worked with the Obama administration, and we were able to overturn that rule. And now, over 2 million home care workers, majority women, women of color, and immigrant workers, now have access to basic minimum wage and overtime protections. This is so critical. I'll tell you, for me, I'm of the sandwich generation, if anyone's heard that term. I have aging parents. I have a father with Alzheimer's who we're trying to figure out how to afford care for so he can age with dignity. But I also have a 3.5-year-old daughter who I have to figure out care for so I can work. And so too many families are struggling with these questions in private. And it doesn't have to be that way, right? We can actually have a public solution. We can actually make sure we have a long-term care system in this country that meets all of our needs. So I hope that we'll be able to continue to work with you all to support the Caring Across Generations campaign and advance the quality of jobs for care workers in America. So finally, as I begin my closing, I want to talk a bit about immigration reform, because it's just so critical when we talk about low-wage workers. Majority of low-wage workers today, or majority of immigrants in America today are low-wage workers. So let's talk for a second. I talked about the economy and the global economy. How many of you knew that over 214 million migrants around the world have been displaced as they seek to survive in this global economy? 214 million people are having to leave their homes and their communities in search of good jobs. And if this number continues to grow at the same pace over the next, as it has over the last 20 years, it could reach 405 million by the year 2050. So while trade agreements open up the doors for products, what we see is that workers are further constrained by trade deals. So workers who migrate in search of work are treated as criminals in the US and are forced to live and work in fear. We've seen this with ongoing worksite raids, continued immigration reform policies like the SB 1070 bill in Arizona, and secure communities initiatives across the country. I don't know what's going on. I feel like I'm in a disco, but anyway. So because of their status as immigrant workers, I'm just going to roll with it. Because of their status as immigrant workers, they're vulnerable to highly exploitative working conditions. Many low-wage immigrant workers today experience high rates of wage theft. I don't know about you, but I was always raised with this understanding that an American value is that you get a full day's pay for a full day's work. That is not the experience of majority of low-wage immigrant workers today. They also experience incredibly dangerous working conditions, not being paid overtime, but being expected to work many hours, not even earning a minimum wage in many industries. And when workers do speak up, they experience retaliation by their employers. Employers say, if you speak up on these issues, I'm going to call ICE and on your family and you're going to be detained and deported. And this obviously has huge chilling effects on organizing amongst low-wage immigrant workers. So comprehensive immigration reform is going to solve a number of the issues for immigrant workers, because the goal is to win a pathway to citizenship for so many undocumented workers, and having status will make a huge difference. And we've been a part of advocating for that. We've been advocating for stopping the deportations. We need to keep families together. The majority of undocumented people in the United States are women and children. They're women and children. And so we have to stop the deportations until we come up with a real solution that allows families to stay together. That's right. But we also must make sure that comprehensive immigration reform includes basic labor and civil rights protections. That's right, because workers need to be able to organize on the issues and complaints about their working conditions without fear of deportation. So we have a campaign called POWER, Protect Our Workers Against Exploitation and Retaliation. And I'm going to show a video of a recent victory we had, but it tells the story of undocumented workers. Now the lights can go down.
When an employer calls immigration on workers, they have the broken immigration system on their side. They can simply deport their problem.
Entonces no pienso que por quejarse de un sueldo que no le están pagando, que por eso los quieran deportar.
The campaign seeks to get the threat of immigration out of worker organizing to stop it from being used as a weapon against workers when they try and fight for their rights. The U visa was a visa that was created to encourage immigrant victims to come forward and report crimes.
So U visa is real legal status. It gives you an authorization to work, it gives you an authorization to be here.
The access to U visas will give workers the protection they need so that when they speak out, they do not have to fear deportation.
This is the first step, first thing you need to get a U visa.
¿Qué les parece?
We got to tell them you have a legitimate shot now to come out of the shadows and be in the sunlight of society.
U visas give campaigns the ability to push past where workers might be retaliated against, so that a campaign that might otherwise be derailed by threats of immigration could continue.
Es un día especial para mí, para mi familia. Es un gran logro. Gracias a Dios y gracias a la unión, gracias a todos.
Pienso que esto nos cambiaría totalmente la vida nuestra, la mía, de mi familia, bueno, de todo. Esta es la aplicación para poder aplicar para la visa. Estamos esperando.
So I wanted to end with that video because I think it's just so important for us to remember we're talking about people, human beings, families. When we talk, it's easy to stand up and talk about the need to raise the minimum wage or pass comprehensive immigration reform, but to remember that these are real people with real lives. That victory was huge because it was the first time we were able to get the Labor Board to certify what's known as U visas that have historically been for victims of sex trafficking, but never for labor abuses. So it just opens up a whole new pathway of protections for workers to have temporary legal status, at least, while they see through the organizing or their complaints at the workplace. So it will take away the fear of deportation and detention for millions of workers. So I implore you, when you're out there talking about the need for immigration reform, to remember to build in that there needs to be these basic labor protections to ensure that low-wage workers, immigrant workers, have a shot at making their working conditions better and their lives better. So with that, I want to be respectful. I'm going over time, so I'm going to close and just say that I hope that my stories and the videos I showed this morning helped you get a bit of a glimpse of a few sets of minimum wage workers and low-wage workers in America and the issues that they face. You know, it's important. I was with a civil rights leader this last week who said to me, Sarita, I consider myself a citizen of a country not yet born. And it sat with me. And I want us to think about that. When we think about illuminating the horizons of hope, we need to channel that hope and the values that sit in this room to be a part of actually imagining and building the world that we want. Low-wage workers are doing that. And I hope you will join low-wage workers in continuing to build out and imagine that world that we need. I look forward to continuing to work with you. I'm so proud that I was able to be here to hear about the work you're doing, but I hope, if anything, you walk out of this room with a clear sense of the importance of your voice and helping tell the story of low-wage workers and really help change their lives and working conditions for the betterment of all of us. Thank you.
Sarita Gupta, let's hear it. And keep